You've been told you're too much, too intense, too sensitive, too complicated. Maybe you were rewarded for being quiet, for smiling, and fitting in. And so you learned to make smaller choices, fewer questions, shallower relationships, quieter dreams. But what if too much isn't a diagnosis? What if it's a description of someone operating at a higher level of psychological complexity, someone whose inner life simply runs deeper than average? Carl Jung spent his life mapping the architecture of the psyche. He noticed a pattern. Some people develop an inner organization that lets them see, feel, and ask questions at levels most never reach. They feel more. They sense more. They require more meaning. This video is a map for those of you who feel lonely in your depth. I'll walk you through 8 signs Jung would recognize in a psychologically rare person. Signs that aren't flaws, but indicators of inner development. We'll translate Jung's language into practical, everyday terms. What to celebrate, what to protect, and what to integrate. By the end, you'll know whether you're simply on a more advanced psychological track, and exactly 3 moves you can make today to protect your energy, keep your depth from burning you out, and turn your sensitivity into a sustainable source of leadership. This is not self-help pep talk. It's a psychologically informed guide to being who you are, fully, responsibly, and with less shame. So, if you've ever thought something's wrong with you for being intense, this is the video that reframes those traits as evolutionary gifts. Ready? Let's begin. When people say you feel everything, they mean you experience emotional life with volume and texture. This is not simply being moody or unstable. The rare personality experiences emotion as layered information, a signal-rich field that carries meaning. Jung described complexes as affect-toned constellations, clusters of feelings, memories, and associations that move through the psyche. For psychically rare people, complexes are not pathological eruptions. They're data. You feel the quiet tension in a room before anyone speaks. A single look can hit you like a chord. Joy and grief arrive with the same intensity. You process them in strata, not in headlines. Practical effect. Because feelings are data, you sense undercurrents other people miss. Social interactions carry subtexts, art, music, the color of late afternoon. These become thresholds into meaning for you. That depth is a gift. It makes you a fierce empath, a visionary, someone who can translate raw feeling into insight. The shadow side. Intensity exhausts. If you don't learn discernment, you become an emotional sponge, taking on other people's weight while losing connection to to your own center. Boundary practice is not about becoming cold. It's about preserving bandwidth. Learn to notice when you're feeling your own material and when you're carrying someone else's. Rest, containment, and ritual help convert intensity into sustainable insight. When you leave a charged conversation, take 30 seconds alone and name 3 feelings that are yours. That simple habit trains you to differentiate. Most life goes by on autopilot. People accept scripts, school, job, relationship patterns, polite conversation. Rare personalities are restless with scripts. You don't ask, what happened? You ask, why does this persist? Your questions are not gossip. They're a searchlight aimed at the bones of things. Jung called this the transcendent function, the capacity of the psyche to bridge conscious and unconscious, producing new perspectives. For you, curiosity is sacred. It isn't mere intellectual play. It's an organizing energy that refuses to let convenient explanations close the case. This curiosity creates friction. When you point out a contradiction, why do we reward productivity while ignoring what drains us? Others may feel exposed. That's why being a deep questioner often marks you as a threat to comfortable illusions. But curiosity also creates possibility. It is how cultures progress, by people who ask the uncomfortable question until a new answer emerges. The practical skill here is to pair curiosity with compassion. Ask bravely, but hold your questions in a way that invites dialogue instead of producing defensive shutdowns. Pick one assumption you hold about your life. Ask why 5 times. Where does the line of reasons end? That's where conscious change begins. You might have built yourself on quieter ground, not as strategy, but necessity. When family, culture, or circumstances forced you to face yourself, you learned to stand alone in a new way. Jung called that process individuation, the lifelong integration of unconscious material into a coherent, singular self. It's how a person stops being just a social role and starts being an individual. Individuation shows up as conscious independence. You don't define your value by applause. You can be present in conflict without dissolving into pleasing. That's not coldness. It's psychological sovereignty. There's a growth path here. Many rare personalities move through stages. First, you may try to blend in, hiding your depth. Later, you wake to difference and begin internal work, facing your shadow, claiming your needs. Finally, individuation asks you to integrate contradictions, the parts of you that scold and the parts that forgive, the ambition and the humility. practical signposts of healthy individuation, stable boundaries, the ability to be alone without feeling empty, curiosity about inner contradictions, and a tolerance for ambiguity. The danger: turning independence into isolating pride, treating solitude as status rather than sanctuary. If you're on the individuation route, prioritize ritual and relationship that reflect your interior life. Mentors who respect depth, friendships that allow silence, and practices that help you reflect, journaling, active imagination, or sustained creative work. You know when someone is lying before a word is said. You register energy shifts as real clues. This is not paranoia. For many rare individuals, intuition is an accurate mode of perception, not supernatural, but tuned to patterns below conscious awareness. Jung argued intuition is a legitimate psychological function, perception through unconscious channels that brings images, solutions, and warnings. When you combine emotional depth with intuitive noticing, you can read micro-expressions, rhythms, and themes like a second language. The gift: you see possibilities and dangers early. You have a talent for creative problem solving because your unconscious can assemble associations faster than step-by-step logic. The pitfall: you can become the unpaid therapist in relationships, constantly diagnosing and fixing, which burns you out. Learn to regulate how much you give. Use intuition for discernment, not for absorption. Ask, is this my information or theirs? When your body registers unease, pause and take one steady breath. Name the pattern you perceive in a sentence. Share it only when invited. If applause feels hollow and trophies taste like sand, you're not broken. Your psyche is asking for alignment. Jung insisted that the psyche pushes toward wholeness. Living against your type generates neurotic symptoms. If you're someone wired for depth, superficial goals feel like betrayal. This sign shows up as a specific intolerance for performative living. You may try chasing external validation and notice an emptiness that applause cannot fill. That emptiness is a signal. You were built for meaning. The constructive path: let meaning guide your life choices. This doesn't excuse impracticality, but it demands that long-term commitments, work, relationships, creative projects, answer to your inner architecture. The practical trade-off is patience. Staying in alignment often requires passing on fast boosts for slow, meaningful growth. Create a tiny meaning check. When offered a new opportunity, ask, does this align with what feels essential? If it doesn't, treat it as trial data, not failure. One of the loneliest experiences of growth is that the people who knew you sometimes don't know the new you. Growth is a kind of psychological death and rebirth. As you shed conditioning, relationships that matched your older version lose resonance. This isn't punishment. It's the architecture of maturation. Jung described stages where the person moves away from the persona, the social mask, into truer expression. As that happens, relationships that were based on your old patterns may implode or require renegotiation. A practical stance. Mourn what is lost, but don't apologize for who you're becoming. Grief and gratitude can coexist. Be grateful for the people who helped you survive early stages, and honest about the new boundaries you require. Discernment matters. You must learn who can meet you at the next level and who cannot. The light matcher, someone who has done inner work, will stay because they value psychological depth. Others will seek the old version or attempt to dim your light. When a friend asks you to revert to a past habit, respond with a gentle boundary. I appreciate that version of me too, but I'm building something different now. Some people aren't just listeners, they're containers. When you show up, others feel seen in a rare and deep way. Jung called authentic encounters transformational. They generate change in both parties. This presence is a skill. It requires attention, patience, and the capacity to tolerate messiness without fixing. You become a psychological mirror that helps others meet themselves. That's a powerful gift. The danger, helper syndrome. When your capacity to hold turns into compulsive caretaking, doing the emotional labor for others, your edges blur. You teach codependence when you overgive. Healthy practice. Train your presence with structure. Decide how much time and emotional resource you can offer. Create rituals to recharge, solitude, art making, and clear conversation about limits. Offer someone 10 minutes of listening with no advice. After 10 minutes, check in. What do you need next? This keeps you present and prevents you from absorbing their process as your own. You may walk with a persistent itch, a sense that your life is meant for something broader than personal success. It's not always clear what that looks like. That uncertainty is itself a sign. Your psyche is aligning toward a transpersonal function, a direction that connects personal meaning to collective transformation. This is not an ego fantasy for fame. It's a felt sense that your work, presence, or art is part of a larger movement. Rare personalities frequently describe a call that's more like a pull, something that asks for integrity, courage, and creative risk. The practical approach: treat the calling as a pathway rather than a single job title. Small, repeated acts of alignment accumulate into vocational clarity. Invest in skill, keep curiosity alive, and protect the inner container that lets your purpose emerge. Set one weekly appointment with yourself to create. Write, design, improvise. Over months, the pattern will clarify the direction. Let's pull this together. These 8 signs are not a checklist to feel special. They're a map that helps you steward your depth. Emotional depth, sacred curiosity, individuation, hyper-perception, meaning orientation, outgrowing old containers, transformational presence, and an emergent purpose. Each comes with tremendous gifts and predictable risks. 3 practical, immediate moves to make today. 1. Boundaries with ritual. Create a 5-minute transition ritual between social time and alone time to offload other people's effect. It's the quickest way to reset your nervous system. 2. Shadow inventory. Once a week, write 1 paragraph about a strength that sometimes becomes a trap, e.g., my curiosity becomes criticism. Naming it reduces unconscious reactivity. 3. Mini alignment practice. Spend 30 minutes a week on a non-public creative practice that expresses your inner life. Let it be messy. Let it be yours. If you're a psychologically rare person, remember this. Your traits are not mistakes. They're edges of human possibility. But gifts must be managed if they are to serve rather than isolate. Jung taught that the journey toward wholeness is the heart of psychology. Individuation is not an invitation to loneliness. It's an invitation to responsible presence, to be deep and sustainable at once. If even half of these signs landed for you, take a breath and accept this. You're not too much. The world is simply not always big enough. But you can live in ways that expand the world kindly, sustainably, and with integrity. If this helped, comment below which sign felt like home. Subscribe for deeper explorations of Jungian practice and practical shadow work. And if you want a follow-up, I'll make a short video on how to integrate shadow tendencies without losing your edge. Say yes in the comments. Thank you for watching. Be kind to your rare self.